Today's date is February 3rd, 2019. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hit the Books Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Holcomb.
And I'm Emery Saunders.
And we are here to give you all the saucy deets on everything comics this week. For those of you unfamiliar with the show, this is your weekly comic book podcast where Emery and I, and perhaps a guest, go through the latest news, the new comic book releases coming to your local comic book shops.
Please support your local comic book shops.
And discuss a topic about the world of comics for your amusement. If that sounds like a good time, be sure to hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and rate well elsewhere. It really does help us out. You can always find us on YouTube, Stitcher, and iTunes, and be sure to check out our website, www.htbvids.com, where you can find links to all of these things and plenty of other content and lists. So, Emery, let's get it kicking.
Oh, yeah.
What have you been reading?
Well, to kick us off, if you will, I have actually been going back and looking at some comics that I haven't got the chance to read. One of the storylines that I just sat down and got myself through was Spirits of Vengeance. Oh boy. Now, mind you, if you're looking at the cover of this, you'll think that, like, oh, it's Ghost Rider and Blade and a couple other characters I might not be familiar with. Let me tell you right now, these other two characters are the ones that probably deserve this story more than the other two. That being said, I do like just about any story that you can have where Blade shows up.
Blade?
Yeah, Blade.
Real talk.
Yes, Blade returns. And
As he always should.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, he doesn't really do much in the story.
Aw.
Which is a shame.
Even though he seems to be a key character on the cover there.
Yeah. It was like, he's really huge on the cover, but in the story, he really doesn't do much. He's kind of the... He's what you would call the golden goose, if you will. He looks really nice, but once you get it, what do you do with it in the story? Not really much.
Well, if he's getting you into a good book,
oh yeah,
can you really be upset?
Not at all.
Nice.
And it's a good book. But neither him nor Ghost Rider are really the focus here. The focus here is actually the redhead at the top, Damon Hellstrom.
Damon,
Son of the devil. And below that is his sister, Satana. Not to be confused with Zatanna from
DC.
From DC. That's Satana, the daughter of Satan. And yeah, what unfolds is a very, very badass story that gets into some biblical fun facts and tweaks it for the sake of, making a story. And I think it works.
Now, we recently, well, not recently, but I'll say last episode spoilers. If you haven't watched last episode yet, why haven't you?
Yeah, come on.
On the last episode, we talked about our favorite books of 2018. And it's kind of a review of everything we had talked about last year, which, to be fair, wasn't as much as we had wanted.
Yeah.
We ended about May, and then we started up again in, like, November. But again, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Our favorite book was Doctor Strange Damnation.
Yeah.
From last year. And it was also a supernatural focused book featuring several characters that, casual fans may not recognize.
Yeah.
And also featuring Blade?
Blade? Guys, can we give Blade his own book, please?
Now, on that scale, does it stand up to Doctor Strange Damnation's
while it
rate
is
of quality, I should say?
While it isn't as focused, well, actually, no, it's a lot more focused. It's a much more focused story that isn't as Well, it's both not as sweeping, like across like the entire like Marvel universe,
Yeah.
because it doesn't involve that many different characters, but uh, the implications of it are huge. Um, and it definitely goes like it takes a deep dive into the like if you are someone who believes anything having to do with Judeo-Christian beliefs or the text involved in that. This is a story that involves quite a bit of that and has its own take on those books and the stories that it tells.
Gotcha. Sounds like a little bit of foreshadowing for our new releases this week.
A little
We
bit.
have X-Men Jesus, apparently.
Oh my god!
More on that to come. More on that to come.
Oh, I'm just gonna say this: if you're going to step into like the angels and demons territory, we already have a really good set of characters for that. Why not let them do it? Like Ghost Rider, specifically Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch, and to a lesser extent, Robbie Reyes, should be talking to the people in the X-Men and saying, "We're right here. Guys, come on."
Yeah.
Also bring in Blade.
Blade? It's just fun to say.
Books are better when you put vampires in them.
Word.
Yeah. Also,
So look at Twilight.
last I checked, unless something happened that I missed, isn't Jubilee still a vampire?
Is that still a thing?
I think it is.
Really? I thought that was retconned real quick. Again, For those of you unfamiliar,
yeah.
Emery is typically the more Marvel fanboyish. I'm typically the more DC fanboyish. Obviously, we bleed over quite a bit. We both read Image and IDW and Boom and Titan and Dark Horse, but
Oh, yeah.
our primary go-tos, me DC, him Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he just blurts things about the Marvel universe that just throws me for a loop.
It's like, wait, what?
Why? They really wrote that? It's still happening? Why? And then I feel less bad about DC, and I'm like, hey, we're doing all right.
Oh, real talk.
Have you been reading anything else?
Going along with the Marvel kick that I've been back on, which I might go right back off given how things are going.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I read the latest X-Men annual, and Cyclops is back.
Now, X-Men Annual, the Uncanny X-Men Annual?
Yeah.
Yeah. That, spoiler alert again for our last episode, which should be out pretty soon here.
Yeah.
That was our variant cover of the week last week.
It was.
Featuring the blue dick-headed Cyclops.
But Blueberry Boy.
Yeah. Not the best costume, but a very well-drawn costume.
It was very well
I
drawn.
think Petrovich did that one. So
Yeah, I'm just going to say right now, his costume looks better when you just add a bomber jacket to it. It really does.
now, did the content match the drapes?
I'm actually going to say yes.
Wow! Wow, did not expect that one.
Yeah, while some of the story conventions that it takes are a bit on the silly side, I gotta say that the guy who wrote it was very committed to trying to tie all of the things that have happened with Cyclops over the years into one cohesive, we're bringing this character back, not in a way that he just like kind of forgets but is somehow still the same guy. This is a story about what happens when not only do you still remember everything, you remember everything that you did wrong and what that would do to that kind of person. It's like, imagine for a moment, like you were basically the protege of Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
And you
What
slowly...
happening right after Dr. Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah.
Ironically.
That's hilarious. Imagine you were the protege of that guy, but you slowly turned into like a militant Malcolm X type. And you ended up dying in the process, only to be brought back by someone who helped you remember why you were a protege of Martin Luther King in the first place.
But then you remember your Cyclops. And you say, fuck that, I'm going to be a dick again.
Now, this is honestly like this, what I would basically consider like a one-shot story. This is a really good way of telling a story that is way more about the destination than it was about the journey.
Gotcha.
And I am excited to see where they bring Cyclops. It would be my greatest hope, my greatest wish for Cyclops to just get a costume where he doesn't look like a blueberry boy again.
My greatest wish is just that they let him have hair.
Yes.
That's all I need.
Please?
You can keep the rest. Just remove the stupid overhead mask thing.
Right.
He shoots lasers out of his face. He doesn't have to worry about anybody grabbing his hair.
Right. It's like literally the thing that would make him much more dynamic is just showing that head of hair of his.
Word.
Yeah.
Let's get on it, X-Men.
Come on.
Come on. Anything else you read this week?
What else did I read? I read some French comics.
Oh, wee wee pee pee.
These were published by Titan Books, as a matter of fact. The Elric series.
Yeah, you've been on this pretty hard recently.
It's very well done. This albino wandering spell sword former emperor goes on adventures and slowly learns like the history, like the true history of his people, and why out of everyone he's the only one who's developed a conscience.
We've all been there, am I right?
You can't just go around killing whoever you want because it feels good. Guys.
It does feel good though.
Guys, come on. We've got to be better than this. And yeah, it's very compelling, very well written. Yeah. More than anything. Now, oh my God.
The version you're reading, is it something that's ongoing? Or is it something that's dated a little bit?
This is actually ongoing. Like there was apparently there was a hiatus for a little bit, since the artists and I think the writer, had other projects that they were doing, but they're back.
Nice.
They're back, and oh my God, it's so good.
It's not made by Joe Benitez, is it?
No.
Talk about lapses in release.
Oh boy.
I love you, Joe Benitez, but boy.
Get back on it.
Lady Mechanica. Took forever.
Yeah, this wasn't quite that bad.
Okay. Well, that's good. That sounds pretty cool. Do you know who's publishing it off the top of your head?
I'm pretty sure. I think I mentioned before Titan Books.
Titan. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good title. You can find it on just about any like Comixology, other places like that where you would get your comics. And if you can't find, or if you want to get like a physical copy, Amazon will definitely sell it to you. You could also try asking your local comic book shop about maybe stocking that one, or maybe just stocking stuff from Titan Books in general. But yeah, this is definitely worth a read.
Sorry, pandering for time for a second here.
Oh yeah. But yeah, this is... Oh my God.
Okay.
It's so well done. Also, definitely not for kids. I should probably say that straight up. There's nudity.
Hot.
There's nudity, there's wanton murder, and other things that basically belong in a book titled like Heavy Metal or something.
Heavy metal.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. Anything else you've been reading?
I think that's it.
Well, I went on quite a spree there trying to catch up on books. Oh, nothing new there.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I heard recently that a lot of the new era of DC Heroes books are basically ending, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you unfamiliar with what DC was trying to do there, after the whole Convergence event finally faded away, and they did the whole cover redesigns and kind of had a new structure going forward, DC started this initiative called the New Era of DC Heroes. And the New Era of DC Heroes, the idea was to bring in brand new characters who may or may not be, diverse in terms of race and sex and creed and what have you.
Background, maybe.
Yeah. And kind of introduce a new wave of heroes / anti-heroes that we could all get behind and kind of appreciate, which is something that prior to that, if you ever watched our, the first season of the show, going back to 2017, we really harped on, Emery and I.
Yeah, we
were
did.
Constantly harping on how they just, Marvel in particular at that time, kept remantling characters that already existed,
right,
for the sake of diversifying their cast. Which, there's nothing wrong with diversifying your cast. You certainly should, if you can, to appeal to a broader audience and allow readers to kind of personalize things for themselves a little bit. However, we were constantly saying, hey, why don't you take the characters that are diverse, that originated in that diverse fashion, and kind of expound on them a little bit more? How about giving them their own books? Or how about creating new characters and creating new powers and something people can get on board with? And DC did exactly that.
Yeah.
Which is great. The problem is they basically copied a bunch of Marvel characters and just reconfigured it a little bit and then dumped it into the ether, seemingly without a particular great deal of effort.
Like Damage.
Damage is basically Hulk for an hour.
Like Spider-Man.
Sideways, which is a terrible name, is basically Spider-Man and Nightcrawler combined. It's what Spider-Man would be if he had the powers of Nightcrawler.
Like Brimstone.
Brimstone is basically a weird version of Ghost Rider.
But not like Silencer.
Silencer is probably the most original of the group. Unfortunately, Silencer is also drawn by John Romita Jr., which is, if you're not a fan of John Romita Jr., it's a really hard ask to constantly read his books.
Yeah.
I have nothing against the guy. I'm sure he's very, skilled at what he does, but his particular aesthetic and style, I find very, very, very hard to read because everything is so boxy and everything is the same color and you can't tell what the hell is going on. Because
it's a lot of 90-degree angles.
Yeah, it's very, very boxy. But I'm trying to get caught up on everything to see if the stuff that I thought was high quality, Curse of Brimstone, I thought was high quality. Sideways, again, stupid name, really high quality interior, and nice cover art. Silencer, good storytelling, good dialogue, cool premise. The Terrifics, which are basically the Fantastic Four ripoff. I really enjoyed the beginning of the Terrifics.
Yeah.
And the artwork for the Terrifics. So there was a lot of good to be taken there.
Right.
I think far more good than bad. Much like the New 52. Like, people hated on the New 52 because a handful of small changes that they didn't like.
Yeah.
But if you look at the collection as a whole, the New 52 was probably 80 to 90% good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there was good, high-quality stuff, imagined to a certain extent, but very good, high-quality stuff in there.
It's a lot more good than bad.
Yeah, and I think this is the same type of situation with the new era of DC Heroes. I'm hoping that the reasons these books are being canceled after a year isn't that they're lacking in quality. I'm hoping it's more just the creators want to move on and do their own thing, or they want to do something new with them for the upcoming event. There's a lot of allusions, as I'll get to in Sideways, about Leviathan, which is the classic Batman Inc. organization, which I'm not a big fan of, but also featured in Grayson.
Right.
But it seems like whatever Brian Michael Bendis is planning for their next event, it's going to be heavily dosed with Leviathan and Talia al Ghul and that sort of whole organization.
Oh, yeah.
Which is essentially the DC version of Hydra. Yeah. Less Nazis, same general premise.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
But you don't know which one's which.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
The one I caught up on last time was Curse of Brimstone, which I think is, I think the final book is coming out this week. But that book was holding up all the way to the end. It's, as you would expect, it does get a little comic booky.
Yeah.
But it was still a really solid book and had a lot of heart to it. Well drawn. James Tynion IV was working on it, I think, for a little while there. But really, really great stuff and really enjoyed it. Sideways, again, you guys got to change the name. The character is really cool.
Like, that's the one problem that this book has.
It's a good cast. You got to change the name. The name is awful. And it's so awful that they even joke about it being awful and the last few issues of the book. So, let me get into this. This is a book I very much recommend people read. The character is a Latino male character that's been adopted. Has a very strong relationship with his mother, kind of less so with the father.
Yeah.
They're basically, they were an older couple when they adopted. It seems like they couldn't have kids or whatever the case was. And he's got a best friend that has another really stupid name. But again, this book is riddled with dumb names.
Yeah.
But he and his best friend, basically, as a teenager would, if they suddenly got awesome powers, where he can basically rift from different places, much like Nightcrawler, but the difference being that he can open rifts and actually use them as a weapon. So
kind of like Blink.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So in addition to being able to hop across literally universes, he can hop he can open a hole and then weaponize it against the person, cut them in half.
Yeah.
If he really wanted to. But basically it starts off, he's kind of celebrating it and trying to make a YouTube show with this secret identity, and then basically leaving a huge trail of breadcrumbs for anybody to find him.
Oh, yeah.
He has an Uncle Ben moment. Once again, this guy it's literally just replaying kind of the Spider-Man Peter Parker story.
Yeah, it's definitely Spider-Man tropes.
Yeah, his best friend is basically, MJ.
Yeah.
He has his Uncle Ben moment. There's a nefarious, rich corporate organization instigating and everything that he does. He's connected to a weird multiverse where other characters don't seem to be. It's very, very, in only 11 issues, it is very, very Spider-Man-ish.
Oh my god.
But that
let me go down the fucking checklist.
That being said, there's a lot of fun to be had and a lot of good storytelling to be had in the book. A lot of great character moments. There are a few weak issues in the mix. There's one issue where there's this villain who can basically stir up people, just by speaking, having a speech in a crowd of people. He can key off their emotion and make them basically riot, and go nuts. But it only works the more people there are, the stronger he is. The less people there are,
Right.
I can't remember what the name is, but it was real dumb. It was Rabble Rouser or something stupid. Once again, these names are terrible in this book.
They're trying real hard, man.
But this book is written by Kenneth Rocafort and drawn by Dan Didio, who did the New 52 Batman.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job. Dialogue's great. Artwork is great. Name is fucking stupid. I can't say it too many. I think, honestly, if there's any downfall to this book, it's that A, it's ripping off Spider-Man heavily, and B, it's just the dumbest name. You shouldn't use an adjective as your name. It doesn't make sense. If you wanted to call him Rift or something like that, he says Rift constantly.
Yeah.
Make that his name.
Literally.
It's a noun. It would be a perfect name. But yeah, Sideways isn't cutting it. But there's a lot of great stuff to be had in there. There's a lot of weird stuff, like the annual, which is right around issues 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Is co-written by Grant Morrison. So
Oh,
things
no.
get really weird.
Oh no.
And they pull not only from the Dark Universe, which is how he gets his powers, but they also pull from the ridiculousness that was Convergence, where there was just millions of different versions of classic characters coming back and going, coming back and going. And
the multiverse.
And they introduced this concept of the Seven. I don't know if this is a pre-existing thing or this is just straight out of Grant Morrison's asshole. But they have the Seven, who are these interdimensional group that basically goes across universes and tries to fix things and save people. And it's an alternate version of Mr. Miracle. It's an alternate version of Zatanna. I think the Silver Bullet. I'm trying to remember who all was in it. It's a bunch of weird, kind of lesser known characters. Oh boy. All right.
It's gonna come to you.
It's the little kid sorcerer that always has the cat with him. Can't remember his name. And I like the occult books. I should remember his name.
Yeah.
But there's just a whole bunch of random people. Frankenstein was on the team. But a lot of cool dynamics play out with that, although it comes at a really weird spot and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for why it's happening there and how it's happening. Although it is a very convenient plot device to solve a problem that does occur in, I think, issue 6 or 7. The character, the Fugonaut, which is basically like an interdimensional police cop.
Oh, yeah, the guy who shows up in like the second issue and tells him, stop.
Yeah, he says, hey, you're destroying everything. I'm going to kill you if you don't stop. And sure enough, he doesn't stop. I won't spoil the dynamic, but it's actually the best dynamic in the whole book. It's the Fugonaut mixed with Sideways. But I think of all the new era of DC heroes so far that I'm caught up on, I think Sideways is probably the best one. I haven't caught up on Silencer yet. I'm not going to catch up on Damage because it was just a bad book from the start. I still need to catch up on the Terrifics.
Yeah.
But for Curse of Brimstone and Sideways, they're both really solid books. Both of them have a handful of weak issues that don't make a whole lot of sense, but there is a lot to enjoy there. If you can get around the fact that they are borrowing a lot of general ideas and principles from Marvel characters.
A bit heavy on the borrowing.
Yeah. The other book I've been catching up on, I think I spoke about this the last episode, is Justice League Dark, the current iteration. This one's written by James Tynion IV and drawn by Martinez Bueno. This is another occult book. I really love the DC occult books, Gotham by Midnight or Constantine or Justice League Dark, whatever the case may be, Swamp Thing, Animal Man. I love all of these things.
Ooh, Animal Man.
And Justice League Dark takes it in kind of it's a good route. It's a fun route. It's an intriguing art. There's a lot of great character development, especially for Bobo the Chimp. Yeah.
Oh shit.
The chimp detective, the chimp genius.
Oh yes.
Yeah. But
Detective Chimp.
He's actually one of the better characters in the book. Another good character is Man-Bat. They have Professor Langstrom, the Man-Bat himself,
sold
as part of the cast. They're basically being led by the combination of Zatanna and Wonder Woman, who makes sense.
Yeah.
If any team book was going to have Wonder Woman other than the Justice League, it would be Justice League Dark, because Wonder Woman is one of the few main characters that has actual kind of magical backgrounds.
Right.
You know,
It's like
her being the daughter of a god. You know,
right. She has a whole lot of divine inspiration when it
Yeah.
comes to like why she is what she is.
yeah. And then there's other characters like Constantine and Swamp Thing have a heavy showing in the book, which is great.
Hashtag save Constantine.
Hashtag save Constantine.
Come on.
Matt Ryan, DC Universe, get on it.
Yeah, that's right.
But Justice League Dark, I'm caught up to issue 7, which I think was the last one. Really cool dynamic. The one caveat I would say is, once again, it's tied a little too much to these Scott Snyder recent events. Like, don't get me wrong, Scott Snyder's a great writer. I love him to death. I love, the stuff he did with Batman and the New 52 was amazing. I love his American Vampire books, like, The Wake, whatever you want. Like, he's done basically everything we could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
And I will forever love him for that. And he deserves the position of power he currently has over at DC. However, that being said, I think, the Dark Knight's Metal thing was awful.
Yeah, it was bad.
It introduced a lot of terrible concepts that were just an excuse to kind of expand the universe, and I don't think they needed that excuse.
They really didn't.
I think they could have just done what they wanted to do without the whole Dark Universe thing and had the full expanded universe that they wanted. Nothing is holding them to this specific canon. Just do what you need to do to create an interesting story.
Yeah.
And then No Justice was their 4-issue follow-up event, and that one was actually pretty decent. That one I actually enjoyed quite a bit. It still had some kind of silly things that were related to the Dark Knight's Metal thing in there, but the Justice League Dark book spins more out of the No Justice books, which, again, a 4-issue book. If you want to kind of have an understanding of what's going on in the DC universe, I'd say read that one, because that one's only 4 issues long.
Yeah.
And you'll have a much better idea of what's going on than if you try to read the Dark Knight's Metal and then catch up on all the books and then read No Justice. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm really looking forward to issue 8 and moving on with that book. So highly recommended. Great illustration inside the book. Fun cover art, great storytelling, fun dialogue, really great character moments with characters you wouldn't always expect. I mean, Constantine has a really awesome moment, I think, in issue 6 or 7. Swamp Thing has a really heart-crushing moment.
Oh my God.
In issue 6, I think. Issue 7 does a good job telling kind of the background stories of how these characters got involved and kind of filling in the gaps between issues.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great stuff to be had in that book, and I highly recommend it. James Tynion also did one of my favorite versions of Nightwing, so I'm a little bit of a fanboy there, so take that with a grain of salt, but I do think it's a really solid book. And then the last book I read was Heroes in Crisis, issue 5. This one done by Tom King and illustrated by Clayman. I've been pretty critical of this book in the past.
Uh-huh.
I still have some very strong criticisms of this book. I don't know why I keep reading it. I'm starting to suspect more and more that the problems I have with the book are not necessarily on Tom King. I mean, there's some that certainly is.
Yeah.
But I think my expectations for this book were just unrealistic for what he wants to do. Like, when I heard of the book, I thought he was going to dive headfirst into the trauma that these characters deal with, how they're going to deal with it, and I thought, each issue was going to have some really interesting story with how these characters worked with a therapist or whatever the case may be, or maybe, the Trinity, whatever the case may be, trying to help them work through the emotional wall that they have to deal with as heroes, especially when they go through real traumatizing events like being killed and brought back to life and then being killed again and brought back to life and remembering it all. Stuff like that, losing friends, losing partners, losing, sometimes witnessing the suicide of a specific character,
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting dynamics, and while he does touch on them briefly for these, 8, I think it was 3, so 9 panel pages, a lot of times they're just wasted. And this one, the panels aren't wasted too much, and there is kind of a fun dynamic going on between the classic Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. But I think there's just some great leaps in logic happening. They have a great speech from Superman in this issue, so I think of all of the Heroes in Crisis issues so far, this one is the most solid.
Yeah.
Just because of that speech by Superman, and just because the dynamic between Blue Beetle and Booster Gold is really great and fun. But again, I think there's just problems that kind of are seeping into this book and not really being solved very well.
Right.
Like Harley Quinn. Everything about Harley Quinn in this book is terrible. Like there's nothing redeeming about the Harley Quinn character in this book, but she keeps being paired up with heroes. She keeps being paired up with, Batgirl, being paired up with, Wonder Woman, or being paired up with the Justice League, or whatever the case may be. And the whole time, she's just blatantly talking about murdering people. Like, it's no big deal. Like, shouldn't that be a warning sign that you're hunting the wrong guy?
Yeah, it's almost like she's been a villain since her inception or something.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's really gross. And, like, it's the typical Harley Quinn exploitative kind of art style and, aesthetic where we're just cashing in having Harley Quinn in the book. Like, the Trinity isn't enough. Like, you have to feature Harley Quinn constantly. She's completely useless to the story, and quite honestly, I don't picture her killing all of these people you see dead in the first book. So I just not a fan of that aesthetic. The book, however, issue 5 is definitely the most solid and did give me hope. So I will read issue 6, whereas issue 5 was like, if this one's bad, I'm done. Tom King settled down a little bit, got me back into it. Big fan of Tom King, but this Heroes in Crisis book has been kind of struggling to go along. I think, again, it's just me not managing my expectations very well.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true a lot of the time, but it's hard to tell. So we'll hold judgment on that one for a little while. But it didn't have the greatest start, but it is getting better. The artwork, however, Clayman, this is probably the best drawn issue so far. I'm not a fan particularly of the Batgirl design. It's like kind of the old school like Batgirl with like the face mask that pokes through her hair.
Oh.
Yeah, and like I get it. It's classic. It kind of, it looks kind of interesting. I'd definitely take that over the purple leather jacket and bright yellow boots look.
God.
But I don't know. I feel like there's something that could be improved there, to make it seem a little more convincing.
There's a really good Batgirl design, and you get to see it in this game called Batman Arkham Knight, where it actually looks like she's, someone who dressed to fight crime.
Yeah. And you know who else dressed like that?
Who?
New 52 Batgirl.
Hey!
Before they redesigned her.
What do you know? It's almost like we've already had a good design for this character.
We really did, though. Like, I know I'm not the final authority on costume designs, but
it was a good one.
It was a good one. And it was even written very well.
Yeah. Guys, get on it.
I am kind of glad that the purple coat, horrible, kind of like it's college party girl version is gone. That one was awful.
That needed to go.
Have you ever wanted to see Barbara Gordon really dumb and basically not be able to fight crime practically?
Yeah.
In the suburbs?
Gah.
Yeah, that's the one for you. But that's all. And now for our latest segment, Did the Content Match the Drapes? This is our weekly segment where we discuss whether a cover or variant cover of the week in previous episodes had content as good on the inside as the outside, and give a shout out to the writers. Now, we already kind of covered this one real quick, so we'll be real quick and speedy about it. X-Men Annual, number 1, the Uncanny X-Men, excuse me. It was written by Ed Brisson. Cover artist was Petrovich, and then the illustrator inside was Carlos Gomez. So, and as you stated, book...
oh, yeah.
Definitely worth the ending
Oh,
and
yeah.
the build up to it.
Yeah. Again, what it took to get here was pretty silly, and I'll just say that it definitely points out some pretty huge mistakes that they've consistently made with that character. But at this point, they've turned it around.
Yep.
And I think that's the most important thing, is that not only have we turned it around, we've already gotten a glimpse of the direction that they're planning on taking that character, which, oh my god, it has been way too long since Cyclops has been a hero?
It's true. They've been playing hard into that Cyclops, very aggressive, somewhat anti-hero thing for probably too long. About a decade at least, right?
Yeah, way too long. Cyclops, in his return to form, has been for me at least, a long-awaited. I want this. This is what I want. This version of Cyclops as the kind who engages in classic heroics.
Yep.
We need more of that.
For sure. So, are you going to continue reading the book?
This actually makes me want to get back into Uncanny X-Men.
Very nice. Now, for us, we're 90s readers.
Oh, yeah.
Uncanny X-Men was like the pinnacle of comic books for us.
It was.
And during our childhoods, I'd assume.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Uncanny X-Men, was just outstanding. And, Jim Lee specifically
Jim Lee
was
in
doing
his fucking prime.
super iconic art,
Ooh.
super iconic designs, super interesting and, compelling stories, some of which got made into the cartoons and stuff like that. Just an awesome era for X-Men fans. And every generation kind of has their thing, their go-to, that they're like, oh, this was better than any other one. I legitimately think that the kind of early to late 90s X-Men books were top of the line. Doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
It hasn't been for quite some time anywhere close to that.
And you can tell just by the movies. The movies are constantly trying to reach that that kind of nostalgic storytelling by repeating these same old tired stories instead of making new ones. And they kind of struggle because of it.
Right. It's you don't have to recycle these things all over again. You just have to get the core elements down, which is what it means to be a hero is to put the needs of others, the needs of those who can't defend themselves, over your own needs.
Yeah.
That's it.
And with that, let's get into the news. First up on the news, the CW has renewed 6 comic book series on its channel. This includes Arrow, The Flash, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and Riverdale, which is the
that's Archie.
The Archie.
Dark Archie.
Yeah. The Archie kind of drama there
Yeah.
that people have really been enjoying. So maybe I need to check it out and quit being so jaded. And then they announced that iZombie previously was going to be going into its final season here. Its final and 5th season starting May 2nd. So
right after I just discovered it.
So nothing too surprising there. Basically, all the superhero shows are being renewed that we expected.
Yeah.
Because they basically print money for DC and
much.
WB. The CW. Come on now. Just call it WB.
We know what this is.
Next up on the news. Some people have signed up for Amazon's working Invincible TV show.
Oh, shit.
Now, I am very, very optimistic about this. Not only because I love Invincible, but also because Amazon did such an awesome job with the Tick.
Of all the characters, it would have been so easy to screw up.
I would have zero confidence in this as a Amazon show or as a Hulu show if not for the great work done with the Tick. A show that absolutely in no way, shape, or form should have been as great as it was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
By no means should the Tick have been a success in the current day, but Oh my god, that show was so good. It's so much fun.
Yep. And now there are some pretty big names included in here. Stephen Yoon, Sandra Oh, and Mark Hamill have all been included in this kind of sign-on initiative for Amazon's new working show.
Round of applause, kids.
They have voice cast contributions from Seth Rogen, Gilliam Jacobs, Andrew Rannells, Zazie Beetz, big names, Walton Goggins, Mae Whitman.
Oh, this is an animated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a lot of promising names being attached to this, a lot of great talent, and being produced by Amazon. A great comic book. Now, if you're waiting for this book to kind of enjoy the content, I would beg you not to. They're very easily accessible volumes of Invincible. It's been going for a long time. I think it's pretty close to its end, if it hasn't ended already. I think it was, last time we checked on it, was like 170 something. Yeah. And they were saying it was only going to run for about 200 issues. So I strongly suggest you get on that and check it out. Next up, this news comes from Newsarama's George Marston. This one, Lock and Key adds Darby Stanchfield in key role. So reportedly, the adaptation of Lock and Key that was dropped by Hulu because they didn't like the pilot has gotten new rights purchased by Netflix, and Netflix is now working on a Lock and Key title, and they have the Scandal actress Darby Stanchfield to be cast as Nina Locke, which is pretty awesome.
That's a pretty key role,
yep.
Playing Nina Locke.
Yep. So
I see what you guys did there.
But this is great news for me because I think Lock and Key, more than probably any other comic I've ever read or seen, lays itself out perfectly to be a TV show. Like, you could frame it, and like each season is about one key, each episode is about one key, however you want to build it. But there is a lot of great content in that book. I think IDW book that was written by Joe Hill, illustrated by Gabriel Rodriguez. This book, it's really hard to tell you about it without spoiling it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Basically, the overarching premise is that very traumatic event happens in the first issue. For reasons related to this incident, the family packs up and goes to the father's childhood home, which is this big mansion. I think it was the Locke Mansion or whatever, something like that. And the cast of the comic basically discovered that there's several supernatural, magical things going on with this home, with the villain that is introduced, and with these keys that are littered throughout the house, and you kind of have to find them. They're hidden away, some in plain sight, but some you have to do varying degrees of extreme things to access them or solve them or whatever the case may be. And each one has a unique ability. One key basically opens a door that allows you to become a ghost, and basically your body dies and you go off into the ether, and you can go anywhere you want, be anywhere you want, possess anybody, but your body's just there.
Interesting.
Dead. And there's another key that can basically open up a person's brain, and you can peel out memories, you can add things, you can cause a bunch of chaos in their head and have them not remember anything.
My god.
Yeah, it's really, really cool, really, really interesting, and not only from a storytelling perspective, but also from an artistic perspective. Like, I think Gabriel Rodriguez must have had a field day drawing this book, because not only is the work great, but it's so imaginative and it's so open to different interesting concepts that I don't think we've seen too much before. I might give Sandman a little credit for inspiring some of the stuff from Neil Gaiman, but really, this book is so unique, so great, and easily, in my opinion, the best book IDW has ever published. So I'm really excited for this. If you are not familiar with Lock and Key, I heavily recommend you go out and pick up a few volumes of it, because it really is worth the read. Once again, very easily accessible. Very affordable to purchase, whether it's from your local comic book shops or whether you're buying it on your digital services like Comixology. It really is worth the time investment, and I think you'll thank me in the end. Next up on the news, Chris Anka, who previously worked with Brian Michael Bendis at Marvel, has jumped ship to return to his friend and co-worker, Brian Michael Bendis, and is planning to work on the Young Justice book that I really enjoyed, that first issue of, with Brian Michael Bendis. So previously he had worked with Brian Michael Bendis on Uncanny X-Men in 2014 and a few other pieces of work. But he's released some kind of concept art he's been working on for the book, and it looks pretty good. So that's kind of a fun, exciting piece of news. He kind of give, much like Brian Michael Bendis getting a new, basically, host of scenery that he can kind of expound his new ideas on and kind of branch out again. Chris Anka can now draw new characters that previously he might not have been able to quite as much, at least not professionally.
Right.
So that's a fun piece of news. If you're a fan of Chris Anka, look forward to that. Next up on the news, James Gunn's Suicide Squad and DC Super Pets gets its release dates. This one from Chris Arendt on Newsarama. Warner Bros. Has scheduled DC Super Pets and the Suicide Squad for May 21st, 2021 and August 6th, 2021 release dates, respectively, according to The Hollywood Reporter. This is happening. No, less concerned about the DC Super Pets. That's obviously something fun for kids. All about it. Suicide Squad 2 needs to not happen unless it's a full-blown reboot, and I don't think it is. You know, don't do this to James Gunn. He actually is a good director.
Yeah.
Let's not waste him on the previous iteration of Suicide Squad, please, which may be the worst movie I've ever seen. Period.
Oh, come on. It's a real Hollywood movie.
It was real bad. It was a real bad Hollywood movie. And I only know this because you forced me to watch it. You wouldn't let me live in my delusions.
You damn right.
But yeah, it's in the news, so I talked about it. I don't want it to happen.
It's happening.
In related news, let's go ahead and talk about the other piece of garbage that we had to deal with. Look, I know there's fans out there that are like, oh, this is the best version of Suicide Squad ever. I love Harley, blah, blah, blah. It's awful. Awful. Awful.
It's bad.
Anybody with half a brainstem can figure out that this is an awful product and we need to stop. There are pieces that could have been great, but we're just completely shat out. So
any kind of movie that turns terrible the minute you turn your brain on. Yeah. Don't.
Yeah.
For the love of God.
Pretty rough. But basically, Margot Robbie from her social media platforms released some teasers, mostly featuring Harley Quinn, for the upcoming Birds of Prey movie, which is slated for February 7th, 2020. I beg you, DC, don't do this. Please don't do this. We have some good karma going forward with Aquaman. With there's Wonder Woman a little bit further back, but there was still a little bit of good vibes going on. The Joker movie looks like it's in another universe and looks great and might be promising. Shazam's trailers have looked awesome.
They have.
And I'm totally about Shazam. Doesn't need to be in this universe.
Don't fuck this up, DC.
Can we just not fuck up Birds of Prey and just let it be in the new universe? The Harley Quinn outfit looks awful. I don't even know how it's a Harley Quinn outfit because nothing about it makes me think Harley Quinn except her makeup. It's about it. It's clearly just a sexploitation type of thing going on to cash in on Harley Quinn.
She's a roller girl.
No,
like they literally turned her into a fucking roller girl
with fucking pom poms and shit. Ugh,
pom poms.
Oh, it's so bad.
On a sucker.
It's so bad.
Oh my god.
Not that Margot Robbie's bad. I love Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie's great,
but the way they're handling this character is awful. Now,
Right.
I may be mistaken. There may be some vague representation by Harley Quinn in the Birds of Prey somewhere. But to my knowledge, Harley Quinn has not been a member of the Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
You know, the Sirens, yes. Birds of Prey, no.
Yeah.
And it seems very antithetical to have Harley Quinn leading the Birds of Prey, you know, with Huntress and Renee Montoya and just, ugh.
You know who was also a bird of prey? Batgirl.
Yeah. Seemingly missing.
Yeah.
Suspicious.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Oh, remember that Batgirl movie we were going to produce, but then Joss Whedon was like, fuck this. This is a horrible script. I'm out. Yeah. Not a good sign.
Nope. Definitely not.
I don't want this to happen, and I beg you, DC fans out there, please don't give them your money for this. They're just going to keep pumping this garbage out. Let them see with your dollars that this is not a good product, and we should perhaps refine this a little bit into the future so that we can get higher quality products going forward. China, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
I get it. When you can't understand the language being spoken, it's very easy to forgive the acting and the lines written. However, even with the language barrier in place, you should be able to recognize that this is a bad product. Please do not support it with your billions of people and billions of dollars. Please. I'm begging you. You keep sending these movies over to $1 billion gross now that they're opening in China, and it's really hurting us. That's all I wanted to say.
It keeps happening.
Oh, man.
China will keep the entire DCEU alive by default.
Oh, man. It's so
Aquaman,
bad.
$1 billion. Aquaman.
Yeah, it's disappointing to say the least.
Yeah.
Next up on the news, let's go ahead and talk about Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck has officially stated he will not be participating in the upcoming The Batman movie, which is supposedly going to be more of a noir, younger Batman, focused more on crime solving and mystery solving, which is what, you know, most people would expect from Batman.
You mean to tell me the guy who was writing and directing
Yes.
and starring
Yes.
in this movie
Yes.
is now
Completely uninvolved.
completely uninvolved? It was like, okay, this is getting to be a bit much. I'm not going to direct. Okay, we're going with a different script. Fine. Yeah, okay, so if you can take a look over here, we've gotten rid of writing. We've gotten rid of directing.
Yes. Yes.
He was going to act, and now he's like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yup.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah, if you're not watching the video, Emery has been flicking off the camera. As he counted down.
Yeah, I am usually never that guy. I am never the guy to flick off the camera.
Yeah.
But
Now, look, this is promising news for me as a person that wants a full-blown reboot or to just split it into multiple, canons, have the upcoming Joker movie be a separate canon. Have the Shazam movie be a more like lighthearted canon. Please don't put these all in the same canon. We don't need it. I don't need Jared Leto anymore. I don't need old man Fat Bat anymore, unless he's going to be directing Terry McGinnis and Batman Beyond, which is another piece of news. We'll get to that.
Yep.
It's interesting because now we get to kind of look for who's going to be the new Batman. Generally speaking, the new Batman has never been like the superstar A-lister. It's the exception being Ben Affleck probably and George Clooney, which I think a lot of people would say were not the best Batman.
Nope.
Ben Affleck has great moments, but again, he's just way too fat, and he clearly doesn't care about the character that much. As much of his as you would think he would, being the huge comic book guy and like kind of co-writer with Kevin Smith. He used to be.
Yeah, see, here's the thing with that. I personally think that his attachment to Batman should never have been as an actor. I think as a writer and a director, Ben Affleck has more than proven himself with things like The Town and Argo. And I think there was another movie where it's like he was the director. But yeah, he's good at writing. He's good at directing. He's also good at acting. Gone Girl was amazing.
Yeah.
But somehow, like when it comes to doing the Batman, the whole thing is like he shit the bed.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat Ben Affleck up too much.
We'll beat him up
because,
a little bit.
Let's face it, if we could all be Batman, we would take that opportunity in a heartbeat.
Oh, you goddamn right we would.
But clearly, I am not the best person to play Batman. I don't think you are either.
It
takes a very
Joker,
particular type of individual, a very jacked individual, to play Batman properly. You have to be a very highly qualified actor who can portray emotion in a suit that hides your eyebrows and half your face.
And a suit that leaves you
usually
just
with
your mouth.
Usually with an altered voice that does not lend well to acting.
Right.
Acting.
Yes.
It's a very tough role to play, and I think oftentimes in live action films, the villain ends up outshining the Batman character. In part because of these limitations, half the Batman can't move their neck because of the dumb suit. Christian Bale had to grumble his voice like this, and you could barely understand him because I'm Batman. I'm not wearing hockey pads.
I'm not wearing hockey. And when you actually do get to have a Batman that can, for the first time ever, move his fucking neck, he's still doing the. I have to hide who I am because.
Yeah, so it's a very hard role to portray, and fans' expectations are always through the roof, so it's very hard to live up to those expectations.
Oh yeah.
I will admit, like the first time I saw BVS, I actually enjoyed it specifically because of the Batman moments. Specifically, towards the end. I know everybody makes fun of the Martha moment, but I actually thought it was clever, if maybe too clever, way to kind of give some kind of emotion to a guy that's constantly grumbling the entire movie and killing people. Who totally didn't kill anybody. Everybody survived those explosions and bullet wounds and stab wounds.
And, head-on collisions.
But there's a lot of
okay, I just have one thing to say about that movie. Superman should have just said, "Would you please save my mother?"
Yeah,
that was it. Okay,
the thing is, he doesn't know who his mother is. He still technically has the secret identity, but everybody knows who he is. But he's saying save Martha, trying to get out Kent, but Batman's choking him with his fucking very convenient kryptonite spear.
It's kryptonite spear of destiny because he's trying to kill Super Jesus.
Spoiler, he does. But it's it's a stretch. There's problems with the movie. I won't get into it. A lot of problems with the movie. Not a good movie.
It's not.
Mostly because of some writing choices, way too much shit crammed into it, and Lex Luthor in particular. Oh, he was so bad.
Aquaman has some similar shit, but somehow manages to still be fun.
Yeah.
Whereas Beavis was just a slog.
Yeah. It's a very long movie, much like Aquaman.
6 movies worth of material.
Yeah, it was very much like Aquaman. But I'd say the bad parts of Aquaman were not as bad. The stuff in Aquaman was like, okay, that was dumb, but I can get over it. The stuff in BVS is so bad,
so egregious
that you just can't get over it. And the good parts can't overpower the bad parts because they're just so terrible. Whereas Aquaman, the good parts were so good. that you just like, okay, I can still put all this dumb stuff and bad acting aside and just enjoy the film,
Right.
and give it a solid 6. Whereas BVS, you come out like, man, some of those moments were really great, but man, that was really bad what they did there. Did they really have to do that? Oh man, it's so bad. Oh, it's a 1. It's a 1. It's a 1.
It's a 0.5.
Suicide Squad is a 0.1. It gets 0.1 for being a movie. That's what it ggets. It has the minimum qualifying feature of the rating scale, which is, are you a movie?
Are you a movie? Yes.
0.1.
0.1.
It's like getting points for writing your name on your test. Did you write your name on your test? 1 point. 1 point out of 100.
Oh, then The Room should get like 3 points. Because I'm pretty sure Tommy Wiseau was responsible for at least 3 important things in that movie.
Yeah. So next up on the news, we had some rumors going around about a Batman animated movie in the works with some new artwork. I don't know where this artwork was coming from, if what I'm about to say is true, but there was some like concept art floating around, and to be honest, I wasn't a fan of the concept art I was seeing. It was like almost like Samurai Jack animation style, and there was just too much like lines and red that just didn't need to be there. Not like New 52, like, armor lines, but more like just random, like Adidas stripes. But apparently, as of yesterday, Humberto Gonzalez said that, no, there is no Batman Beyond movie in development. Their official word is not true. We are not working on an animated Batman Beyond movie. In fact, to be extra sure, it was checked and shot down at Warner Animation Group on the feature side, DC Films, and WB Animation TV side. So what I'm guessing is that some people drew up some rough concept art to try to pitch it, but then it just never got anywhere. I think that's the most likely scenario, and then somehow pictures of it got leaked out and people ran with it. It's also possible that they're just covering their ass because DC is terrible at their job.
Yeah.
And they leaked it all out, and now they're like, fuck, let's just pretend we didn't.
Yeah.
Where's that cocaine? Thank you, Aquaman.
Can I just say, yes, also that. Can I just say, I don't know what people's aversion or what the studios think people's aversion is to like the cyberpunk dystopian future that we all desperately want to see.
Yeah.
If Blade Runner 2049's turnout was to be believed.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
I think, honestly, the Batman Beyond universe would be the easiest of all the DC properties right now with all the confusion going on.
Yeah.
To adapt into a live action movie.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to be tied to any canon.
You really don't.
Because the Batman Beyond canon is not mainstream canon most of the time. New 52 had a mainstream canon for a little bit, and then they altered it a little bit, and then they had 2 alternate books that were alternate Batman Beyonds. One trained by Dick Grayson, who was battle hardened, and Bruce Wayne was gone, and it was very interesting. There's a lot of great material for Batman Beyond to be pulled from, and I think there's the late 90s, early 2000s kids who watched Batman Beyond are old enough now to come out to your movies and want to see it in live action.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a big, fat, giant, muscled out guy, because Terry McGinnis was just a teenager that...
He was a teen in a super suit.
Yeah, that had a powered suit that he didn't necessarily have to be the strongest or most powerful guy out there, He didn't have to be Bruce Wayne. He was just a kid.
Easy explanation for the suit. Batman got old.
Yeah.
But still couldn't stop being Batman.
Yeah, and you could have a perfect story arc. You'd have the first movie is kind of the introduction to Batman Beyond, kind of like a Nolan trilogy type of thing.
Yeah.
First one introduces Bruce Wayne and Terry McGinnis and the whole backstories of what's going on, and they have their first, bout with, say, the Joker gang or whatever, the people that killed Terry McGinnis's, father.
Right.
Father, for those of you who watch the Justice League Unlimited series. Really great. That was probably the best episode of the Justice League show.
Oh,
That was the Batman Beyond episode, which is so weird.
Yeah, that was a trip.
You could have the second one basically focused on kind of Batman finding out about the whole Argus thing and about his true origins, and why it is that Amanda Waller did certain things and led to the current Batman iteration, and have that movie about him working it out with Bruce and kind of figuring things out, what he wants to prioritize in life, whether he wants to continue being this Batman Beyond character, and then maybe kind of introduce the Justice League at the end, and then have the third movie be like, the future Batman Beyond Justice League team up movie, where you basically have the episode where I don't want to spoil things if you want to go back and watch that cartoon, but there's an episode where Terry McGinnis is drafted into the Justice League to internally investigate for Superman.
Yeah.
Some ongoings that have been killing Justice League members, and
Yeah.
Superman strongly suspects that it's going on internally.
And this is a like black suit Superman at this point.
Yeah, it's the black and white, old, salt and pepper Superman. That's
fucking white wall hair.
And that would be a great trilogy to set up. I mean, the stuff writes itself. As long as you
It does.
execute properly, you could have a really great product. And I think that one's probably the easiest one because it doesn't have to be tied to any of this other bullshit.
Right. I think here's the thing that's kind of silly about the fact that we haven't done this yet. One, we already have a pre-existing fan base for this. Two, you guys are willing to spend money creating a CGI chin strap for Ocean Master.
I don't know why that bothers you so much. It wasn't that bad.
It was noticeable because they literally could have used a practical effect that would have been, believable as head armor. Why didn't you? Why did you have to CGI that? You guys didn't even have to have the chin strap. Just let it be a helmet thing. Why the chin strap? Oh my god. Okay. You guys are willing to spend money on that clearly silly looking thing, but you don't want to invest in Batman Beyond. What the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret that DC loves to waste money.
Or play chess against themselves.
They certainly love to do that too. Again, we beat up on DC all the time.
They make it so easy.
It's not because we don't like DC. We love DC products. We just don't like it seeing mishandled.
Yeah.
And seeing just all this effort and all this money just being blatantly wasted on silly, stupid things. Like, how much money did they spend on animating a CG helmet that they could have just physically made for a fraction of the cost? If that. I mean, you could probably find a cosplayer down the street that could make a proper helmet that would look great in a movie for like $100-$200.
Yeah.
Easy.
Pretty simple.
You don't have to spend $1 million on CG effects to animate a stupid helmet. I don't think it's that difficult.
Right.
I'm not a filmmaker, but everything doesn't have to be CG.
Right. Here's the thing that kills me about it. Every time I see them unnecessarily CGI part of a costume when the rest of it is basically practical, it makes me think of the eye mask from Green Lantern.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just more subtle. Because it's not bright green and shiny.
Right. Instead of... There were parts of the Green Lantern movie that were cool. The thing that wasn't, the thing that needed to be cool the most, was the suit!
Yeah. Oh, man. Green Lantern is... We got to do proper reviews of these movies.
Yeah, we do.
But
oh
man,
my god.
That movie was such a disappointment. Such wasted potential. They had the perfect actor for Sinestro.
They did!
The perfect actor.
He's so good, they dusted him off for fucking Shazam!
And they just fucked up that movie so bad that he can never do it again. That's the disappointing part. You're ruining key actors. You're ruining key scripts. key storylines that we're never going to get to see again because they tried it and they epically failed.
They have one more shot with Mark Strong. One more shot, and it's in Shazam. Don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
Guys.
So, we'll see what happens. Next up on the news, we're finally getting away from DC a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Again, from Newsarama, Chris Arendt has written this one. Scout's Fisheye comic has been optioned for a movie. Now, this one I thought was cool to mention because Scout doesn't get a whole lot of shout-outs, because of how long our podcast runs and how much time it takes to edit and everything. We cut down our weekly comic book releases, and we cut Titan, we cut Scout Comics, we cut Oni Press, several other brands that are kind of smaller in volume, so we just didn't feel it was worth going through those extra books every week when the time investment to do it is a lot greater. So we tried in an effort to cut down on the new releases every week and the time it takes to get through them. We realized that not our entire audience doesn't want to sit there and listen to every single one. We cut those, but those companies still make really great products, and they're still eligible for comic cover and variant cover of the week, so we always look through what they are releasing. But Fisheye was kind of like a weird book. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was a weird book where it was kind of like a TV showdown type of book. Yeah, it was kind of like not like Mojo World, but kind of like Mojo World. But it was enjoyable for the amount I read.
Right.
But I thought this should have a good shout out that a Scout comic actually got optioned for a movie. So that's promising signs. They're actually digging into kind of the lesser known books. Scout being a really small publisher, comparatively speaking. Scout actually published a book from a local team.
Yeah.
I think it was Long Gone. It was a book that was worked on by some people that worked at a Laughing Ogre that is near us here in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
So a lot of great stuff coming out of Scout Comics, and cool that they got an option for a movie there. We'll see what happens with it. Next up, The Boys got their first trailer.
Oh boy.
This one coming from Newsarama to George Marston. Amazon's TV Prime Video option has just released the trailer. We watched it, being produced by Seth Rogen. What did you think of it?
Only based on the fact that it's being produced by Amazon, do I have really, really high hopes for this. Because this video really doesn't show much, honestly. And in a lot of ways, I actually prefer that it doesn't show me terribly much. I need just enough to make me want to watch it. Yeah. Like, I don't need to know, like, every little plot point. Is like, you tell me it's based on this comic and give me, just a little bit of what's going on. That's all I need.
Yeah. I thought it looked like a great trailer. I was actually really impressed. I didn't expect... I've only read a little bit of The Boys. I think you've read a little more than I have.
I've read a bit more than you have on The Boys.
I've read like 2 issues of it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I just never got around to it. Just never kept up with it. But from what little I remember, this kind of reminded me of a few things that did happen in those 2 issues. Mm-hmm. And it makes me want to go back and read it all.
Yeah.
Which, if a trailer is doing that, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
So I'm probably expect a recap of The Boys from me before too long here, before the show comes out. I have high hopes for it. Again, Amazon blew the doors off, the house with The Tick.
Oh,
it just really knocked it out of the park. I think they're going to do a similar thing with this iteration of The Boys here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for any of you who are curious what the basic premise of The Boys is, basically this writer, I'm forgetting the name of the writer of the book, but imagine for a moment you're writing something with the intention of deconstructing an established mythos type. the first arc, or the overarching story, follows what's basically a government outfit meant to rein in, kind of similar to Powers, but on much more a like a federal sense, as opposed to Powers being more like a local thing.
Kind of like Amanda Waller, what
Yeah.
she does.
Yeah, there's like, imagine like a group of people basically act like, what if Shield had to deal with a set of Avengers that were secretly fucked up behind closed doors. And the first arc has to deal with an Avengers type group or Justice League, what have you.
Yeah.
In later volumes, they deal with different archetypes or superhero archetypes that they deconstruct the shit out of.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ones I read about, I think it was issue 1 and 2, I'm assuming. But that one was about the Justice League types, and I was like, whoa, whoa, there's some saucy stuff going on here.
Oh, boy.
So now I'm kind of excited because I want to jump back into it and catch up and see what happened in it.
Oh, yeah. For a teaser of what they will get into, should this show do well, they also deconstruct an X-Men type setup.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This could be intriguing.
Yeah.
I'm totally down. Amazon does great work. I'm excited for it. Can't wait. Next up on the news, DC has made some organizational changes. This article coming from Michael Doran, managing editor over at Newsarama. Once again, we use Newsarama all the time. Sometimes we forget to give them a shout out. It's a great news resource. There's other ones out there like CBR and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I think too many of them report on just bullshit rumors. And honestly, I think they just make up a lot of stuff. Newsarama has been like consistently one of the most dependable ones I've read, even if they're not the most flashy. They have a consistent website. The one caveat is that they have these terrible videos that autoplay on all their pages, which is really annoying.
Every time.
If they got rid of that, I would love their website. But big shout out to Newsarama. They do really good work. But getting into the article, DC just announced that it's laying off a handful of, organizational people, mostly people in top roles. I'm assuming high paid roles, in order to hopefully restructure things to be more coherent and more efficient going forward in their production. I'll go ahead and read the quote here. This one coming straight from the DC memo there, received from Pan Lifford, the president of Warner Bros. Global Brands and Experiences. Quote, today has been a challenging day. We have made organizational changes across DC that we believe will help to strengthen and evolve the division for future success. With these changes come difficult decisions, which we take very seriously. Quote, we recognize and appreciate that all of our employees have made considerable contributions to our business, and that it is difficult to lose colleagues, many of whom have been here for a long time and have made an important impact on DC. We thank them for their hard work and dedication to DC. As always, we are committed to taking care of our employees and will be thoughtful as possible with those who are impacted by these changes. Together with Dan and Jim and the executive team, Dan Didio specifically, we have spent time assessing DC's business as well as the comic book publishing landscape. DC is going back to its roots of delivering epic stories with our world-class characters, stories, and brands. Being a premier house of storytelling will never go out of style, and we intend to ultimately super serve our existing fans. That was really lame. While providing new compelling content that engages and excites even more fans from around the globe. Rest assured, the direct market will remain at the heart of our business and will continue to be one of our greatest strengths. The new streamlined structure is focused on creating, delivering, and supporting a robust publishing operation that will allow DC to be nimble, navigate an industry in change, and thrive. As we communicated today, we are forming 3 distinct work streams: editorial, production, and manufacturing, and publishing support services. Editorial will continue to be run by Bob Harris, SVP and Editor-in-Chief, who will also be responsible for new initiatives in global publishing, editorial scheduling, and art direction. How about this for editorial scheduling? let's commission books, have them created beforehand, chop them up into concise narrative pieces, and then release them ahead of time instead of going paycheck to paycheck to paycheck and relying on these artists and creators to make up the entire thing in 1 month. Just a thought.
You said it before, I'll say it again. The current model is not working.
As you'll notice on Delay Corner,
Yes.
which happens every week now.
We really wish it didn't.
Next up from that quote, blah, 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 it talks about the organizational structure of that. Quote, we recognize there are other groups across DC who are not fully dedicated to supporting and publishing business and therefore are not directly addressed in today's news. As the global brands and experiences structures continue to develop, I look forward to sharing more information with you as that evolves. Many of you have questions, and in the coming days, you will receive more information from Bob, Allison, and Hank about the teams. Together with Dan and Jim, I will be hosting town hall meetings Thursday on the individual floors to discuss these changes and provide more insight. Thank you again for your support, hard work, and loyalty to DC. Each of you is incredibly valued, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon where I do my best to answer any questions. So, interesting news. We'll see how it works out for them. From what it sounds like is they're going to become more event heavy, which is something that has been a problem, I think.
Yeah.
More or less. I don't think events are bad necessarily, but I think having multiple major events that correlate between several different books, while it might be good for business, if the quality isn't there, it's usually bad for the group as a whole because it's just going to deter readers from wanting to read future books. Like the Dark Knight's Metal thing, I know there's popular parts of it, but the overall content was not up to snuff, and it scared a lot of people away, and I think a lot of readers are abandoning ship because they have no idea what the hell's going on for a lot of these books. And I think that was the biggest struggle that the new era of DC heroes had to deal with, is that you had to understand all of this nonsense in order to even understand what the hell was going on in most of these new era of DC heroes books, because most of them were directly influenced by the events of Dark Knight Metal.
Yeah.
So just something to think about. You know, I'm not a business executive. You know, I'm college educated, but I'm not college educated in business or art for that matter. But from my perspective, I feel like there are easy solutions to a lot of problems that DC and Marvel both currently have, and the comic book industry as a whole.
Yeah. As a customer, I will say this. Event fatigue is real.
Yeah.
It's like once the only thing that you guys end up releasing just turns out to be it's all events all the time, no exceptions.
Yeah.
Why do I follow these characters anymore?
Well, the thing is, I think it would be better in design if you just had your, have maybe one event a year, like one big event to end out the year or something like that. That's, sort of alluded to and built up throughout the year in all the titles, but not really directly influencing the narrative of the titles.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, have your little concise event. But if you want to do more like event style books, have them be independent books that don't have to be alluded to in any of the canon books. They can still be canon, but you can just set them aside and be like, this is going to be its own concise book and event and storyline. For example, Batman White Knight. Very clear, very concise, issue to issue, no delays, was clearly fully ready to go by the end there. I think the only thing that got changed was maybe the end because of how successful it was. They kind of gave a good setup for a future dive into this Sean Gordon Murphy world.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to be tied to anything else that was going on. Mr. Miracle, that was one of the advantages of the Mr. Miracle event book. It seemed like a big, world-shaking event was going on in this book, maybe. But it benefited from that. It wasn't connected to the main canon stuff going on because it didn't have to be afflicted by Dark Knight's Metal. It didn't have to be affected by No Justice. It could just be its own concise story, which is great. And I think if DC and Marvel took that approach more often, it would be much more beneficial to them and to incoming readers and retaining readers, for the longevity of the service and the consumer base. I don't know if you agree with me, but that's personally how I feel the structure would be benefited the most. If you want to boost sales, have like some kind of cool artist do some variants, like, you know, say, hey, Jim Lee, you're a really popular artist and we really love you. I know you got a lot on your plate, but would you consider doing our, you know, September variants for that month and just pick, you know, 5 or 10 titles and do a cover for them? You know, anything you want, you know, just go ahead and work at any theme you want, and we'll just advertise that. That would give you a huge boost in sales to have Jim Lee variant covers, you know, for these books.
Oh, easily.
Release them, you know, give him a year to work on it, so he's got plenty of time to work on the 5 or 10 drawings, you know, for the cover. I think stuff like that could easily boost sales without having this, you know, universe-shaking event that makes it impossible for new readers to kind of understand what the hell's going on. It makes it difficult for, you know, long-term readers like me and yourself to, you know, keep up on and not have to play, you know, hundreds of titles worth of catch-up on to even understand what's going on and stay in the know, more or less. But I'll leave my rant there. Next up on the news, it's a time for another episode of Delay Corner.
Oh, boy.
Womp womp. This time coming from Marvel Comics. Fantastic Four and Tony Stark Iron Man both have issues pushed back. Marvel has informed retailers that Fantastic Four number 9 and Tony Stark Iron Man number 11 have both been rescheduled. Iron Man number 11 has been pushed back 5 weeks to May 22nd. 5 weeks. Damn. And Fantastic Four number 9 has been pushed back 3 weeks to April 24th. So if you're a fan of those books, unfortunately, you're going to have a bigger gap. These are books that have been previously delayed too. So again, we always say it. We're harping on it again. The quickest and easiest way to lose your reader base is to delay your book. You know, people forget about it. And then when it does appear on the shelf again, they don't want to go back and have to play catch up and remember what the hell's going on and have to reread the whole run just to figure out, okay, where was I at in the story again? Okay. It's
maddening.
It's difficult for fans, and it's a bad business practice. And once again, I wish these things were prepared ahead of time, and then cut into coherent pieces and then sold issue to issue, just like normal, but having been already created and ready to release. That's my feeling on it. I harp on it all the time. I'll leave it at that. So that's it for Delay Corner. Hopefully these delays become fewer and far in between, and we get this stuff nailed down. And that, my friends, is the news.
You know, it seems like every week there's always something going on with all of these comics that we read.
Out with it, man.
Out with it. This is a special week. It's a very special week. You know why? It's a Super Bowl. And what does every Super Bowl start with? The kickoff. So, to kick us off... And so, to kick us off, I'll ask you, as I always do, what comics are we picking up this week?
Well, Emery, I thought you'd never ask. First up from Marvel Comics, we have Age of X-Man, M-A-N. The Marvelous X-Men, M-E-N, number 1. Is that confusing?
Only a little.
Next up, we have Asgardians of the Galaxy, number 6.
Whatever you do, watch your butt.
Next up, we have Avengers, number 14. We have Champions, number 2. We have... Holy crap, there's a lot. Conan the Barbarian, number 3. We have Daredevil, number 1.
Ooh.
We have Deadpool, number 9, featuring a lovely Valentine's Day cover.
Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha.
We have Gunhawks, number 1. We have Killmonger, number 4. We have Old Man Quill, number 1.
Ooh, boy. Another old man.
Old Man Quilliam. This one written by the same person who wrote Old Man Hawkeye.
Because we're just trying to make these people old at this point.
Yeah. If it's a good story, I'm all for it. I liked Old Man Hawkeye. I liked Old Man Logan. I don't think I like the new version of Old Man Logan as much, but
Eh.
it was something.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Star Wars number 61. We have The Immortal Hulk number 13. We have Tony Stark Iron Man number 8. Remember, the issue 11 will be delayed.
Yep.
We have Uncanny X-Men number 11. We have X-23 number 9. And that wraps up Marvel Comics. From Dynamite Entertainment, we have Battlestar Galactica Twilight Command number 1.
Bears eat beets.
We have Project Superpowers number 6. We have Red Sonja number 1. We have Vampirella versus Reanimator number 2.
More boobs.
And that wraps up Dynamite. Boobs as always. From DC Comics, we have Adventures of the Super Sons number 7. We have Batman's number 64, Last Cold Case, with a very cool variant cover from Sean Gordon Murphy.
Oh boy.
We have Deathstroke number 40. We have Female Furies number 1. We have Green Arrow number 49. We have Green Lantern number 4. We have Harley Quinn number 58. We have Justice League number 17. We have Superman 100-page Spectacular number 1. We have Suicide Squad, The Black Files number 4. We have The Curse of Brimstone, probably the last issue, number 11. We have The Dreaming number 6, which is the Vertigo title. We have The United States versus Murder Inc. number 6. And we have Brian Michael Bendis' Young Justice number 2, which I will be picking up as part of the Wonder Comics there. From IDW Publishing, we have Atomic Robo, Dawn of the New Era, number 2. We have G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, number 259. We have G.I. Joe, Sierra Muerte, number 1. We have Marvel Action Avengers, number 2. We have Sonic the Hedgehog, number 13. Gotta go fast.
Gotta go fast.
Next up from Image Comics, we have Cemetery Beach, number 6. We have Curse Words, number 20. We have Die, number 3. We have Freeze, number 3. We have Gasolina, number 15. We have Prodigy, number 3.
Oh, shit.
We have Self-Made, number 3. First issue was pretty interesting. We have The Walking Dead, number 188. We have Unnatural, number 7. And we have Vindication, number 1. From Boom Studios, we have Giant Days, number 47. We have The Empty Man, number 4. We have WWE, number 25, brother.
Oh, yeah.
From Dark Horse Comics, we have BPRD, The Devil You Know, number 13. We have Halo, Lone Wolf, number 2. We have LaGuardia, number 3. We have Mystery Science Theater 3000, number 4. We have Sword Daughter, number 6. And we have The Girl in the Bay, number 1. And we have The Umbrella Academy with the upcoming show, Hotel Oblivion, number 5.
Ooh.
And that is everything coming to your local comic book shops.
Again, please support your local comic book shops.
And digital devices this week. Hello, folks. Please excuse this brief interruption. We unfortunately came too close to the beginning of the Super Bowl. It is Super Bowl Sunday. So Emery had to leave pretty quickly there to pick up somebody and go enjoy the Super Bowl where he was going to. And obviously, I had to enjoy the Super Bowl where I was going to. We both know how that turned out. A record-breaking low score in the Super Bowl, so not the most exciting of events. But it did take a chunk of time out, and unfortunately, Emery won't be able to come back tonight to finish the episode. But we still wanted to get the episode out to you. He left me a few notes for our topic of discussion tonight. We left it right at the end of the comics of the week. Now, after we read the comics of the week, for those of you unaware, we always hand out a award for cover and variant cover of the week, and we'll get right into it. So, now it is time to hand out the prestigious, nay life-changing award of cover and variant cover of the week. First up, our cover of the week goes out to none other than Marvel's Tony Stark. Number 8. This cover done by Alexander Lozano. Now, this cover is a great callback to the classic, I would say, kryptonite for Tony Stark, his addiction to alcohol. This has been kind of perpetuated since the Demon in a Bottle storyline. It's one of many of Tony Stark's character flaws, but the one that he is probably most susceptible to, at least throughout history, is his infatuation with being intoxicated. The cover features a really great blending of the colors of his suit with the blending of a brown liquor, most likely whiskey or bourbon or something of the sort, on the rocks there. And you can see Iron Man there in his Iron Man suit, basically drowning in the liquor with the ice cubes crushing him overhead. It's just a really, really cool cover that really sends an interesting message about how the alcoholism has kind of been a huge burden upon Tony's life. I mean, I don't think Emery was, and I'm definitely not caught up on the current iteration of the Iron Man legacy or what has been going on in this specific comic. However, it does harken back to the classic problems that Tony Stark has been dealing with throughout most of his existence as a character. And it's a genuine problem that I have a lot of familiarity with, not because of my particular addictions or anything like that, but because very big people in my life have struggled with alcoholism, specifically parental figures. And it has been extremely detrimental to both my life and to the lives of all the people around the people involved, as well as the people themselves who struggle with these addictions. And it really hits home for me as a person that has dealt with several family issues with substance abuse, specifically alcohol. And have unfortunately been on the receiving end of a lot of fallout because of other people's struggles with alcohol addiction. And it's a cover that not only is artistically brilliant, but sends a really strong message to anybody who's aware of this problem and doesn't see alcohol as simply, a way to have a little fun. And can see that sometimes alcohol can become something more than just a enjoyable drink or beverage to help loosen people up a little bit. And that when exploited or used in bad context to an excessive extent or in the long term, it can become a very crippling substance. I think far underrated for how crippling it can become, particularly for people who have addictive personalities. And this cover, it really touches on that very strongly. If you don't watch our YouTube channel and you can't see the cover, I strongly suggest you go ahead and take a look at it. Again, we try not to take this too seriously. It is an imaginary character, but the problems with alcoholism are very well known and very real for the people who experience it, who live it, and for the people around such people, family members, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, you name it. It affects a lot of people worldwide and not on a small scale. So once again, shout out to Alexander Lozano for creating not only a great artistic endeavor, but also sending a very interesting message out into the ether there. I think it's work that you should be really proud of, and very impressed with Marvel for putting this cover out as the main cover for the issue, because it really is a cool and interesting cover, and really does acknowledge that, hey, these heroes aren't perfect, just like none of us are perfect. There are certain character flaws and certain struggles that everybody goes through, that everybody has to try to overcome. We don't always succeed, but it is worth the effort to try. So, great cover, Alexander, and I look forward to seeing what else you bring out in the future. It's being written by Dan Slott, so I'm probably going to check it out sooner rather than later. Dan Slott has done a lot of work that I am very fond of. So be sure to check out future episodes. Did the content match the drapes? You'll find out in the future for sure. Next up, our variant cover of the week comes from none other than DC Comics. This one coming from Green Arrow number 49. This variant done by Francis Manapool. Now, this is a cover where you see a kind of classic fantasy Robin Hood-ish Green Arrow hooded in a tall field with tall grass with his bow drawn to full length with the arrow very much in the foreground. And very cool uses of color. I think of most of the covers we give awards to, it's usually because of the genuinely great illustration or the very interesting art aesthetic. What method was used for creating the cover. We often give that a lot of credit. However, this one, I think the color is what makes this one great. It uses a really great blending of green and yellow hues and everything in between to create a really, really cool dynamic aesthetic, really cool, easily displayable cover that I think looks great and would be a wonderful addition to anybody who is a DC fan or a Green Arrow fan, what have you. It just really is a genuinely cool, genuinely interesting color scheme, and it has a brilliant underlying sketch to it as well. So definitely nothing underhanded there. It's just an excellent variant cover from bow to stern. It's just a nice representation of what Green Arrow can be artistically, and quite frankly, Green Arrow has been having a pretty nice stretch with their covers and variant covers. I think variants in particular, which is great to see. I've never been the biggest Green Arrow fan, outside of his role as kind of a conscience of a lot of the Justice League members and as a kind of somewhat humorous character. I've never been that big in the Green Arrow character. I know a lot of people love the Arrow show. I've been on record saying that I'm not a fan of the Arrow show quite as much, particularly because I don't particularly care for Stephen Amell's acting. However, that being said, this cover great covers like this always elicit me to pick up those books and read those books and catch up on those books. I think the last Green Arrow version I read was the New 52 version, which I did enjoy. But I do love the classic, Robin Hood looking aesthetic with the hood pulled over, the kind of, I don't want to say medieval attire because he's obviously got very modern bows and very modern arrows equipped there, but he is going for that certain aesthetic, and I really enjoy it, really appreciate it. Francis Manapool did a wonderful job on this illustration, and the color scheme is outstanding. So, big congratulations one more time to Francis Manapool for his Green Arrow number 49 variant, and once again to Alexander Lozano to Tony Stark Iron Man number 8 for the regular cover of the week. And now for our new friends of the show, this is the part of the show where we discuss a topic of our choosing about the world of comic books. Now, this is usually where I'd say, Emery, what is our topic? But of course, Emery had to get out of here a little early, so I'll try to make this a little short and sweet and be merciful upon you all. This is a news item that we discussed a little bit earlier in the show and kind of touched base on a little bit, but the confirmation that the Batman will not feature Ben Affleck and will possibly be a kind of separate scheme away from the proper current DCEU has created a big vacuum for the role of the Batman. Emery and I both made kind of a small list of people we think would match up very well under the cowl, or as specifically Bruce Wayne. Once the face is under the cowl, it's usually hard to kind of tell the difference between a lot of actors unless you have a very prominent chin like Ben Affleck does. what really makes the character is how they portray Bruce Wayne, how fit they are, how fit they can look in the suit. I think Shazam proves that you don't necessarily have to be the most fit guy on the planet to portray a good, large superhero. However, we all know that Christopher Nolan's Batman did not feature the biggest, strongest guy. It just featured a very, very, very well-defined Christian Bale, who had clearly worked out, but was not quite the bodybuilder lookalike that many comics portray, and that I think Ben Affleck's Batman tried to portray. So, without further ado, I'll get into our lists. Let's go ahead and touch a base on Emery's list first. So once again, this is coming from Emery, who could not be here for the end of the show. We do apologize, but we want to make sure we get these episodes out to you. We have been struggling to get these episodes out every week, but unfortunately, we each have a rotating schedule, so it's hard to sync us up with enough time to record a 3-hour podcast. So first up, the number one choice for Emery is Armie Hammer. Now, Armie Hammer, probably most well-known for his role on The Lone Ranger. I know he's done several other roles, but Armie Hammer is the kind of quintessential young-ish, tall, dark, and handsome figure. I think a lot of people have been kind of pining for Armie Hammer, which I do understand. I don't know what Emery's specific logic for him was, other than that he is the quintessential tall, dark, handsome, blue-eyed, stereotypical Bruce Wayne, which has been the classic Bruce Wayne and kind of the classic look. The guy obviously carries a 5 o'clock shadow very well and could easily become, fit enough for the role. I do agree that he could be a very competent and very cool Batman. From my perspective, I think he's kind of lacking in the kind of performance department as far as his acting performances and experience. However, I could easily be proven wrong, and very often the new Batman is not somebody who has been consistently at the top of the, pecking order in terms of people in Hollywood. It's usually someone that they can spend a little less money on and kind of cash in on for a decade, if need be. That seems to be the new way to go, and it obviously worked out very well for the Marvel casting. I think Robert Downey Jr. is probably the one exception, just like Ben Affleck was probably the one exception here. But you see how that worked, because Ben Affleck only stayed for 2 movies. I think Robert Downey Jr. is probably the one exception, maybe Scarlett Johansson. But more often than not, for these superhero films, they go with lesser-known actors that they can afford to bring in initially, and then kind of keep along for the long haul if need be. So Armie Hammer would fit that prototype pretty well. I mean, again, he does have some experience. He is a known quantity, but I'm not sure if he would be the best, but I'd be totally open to that. So good choice by Emery there. His next choice is Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, this one I'm not sure about. I think Jake Gyllenhaal would be a great support character, maybe one of the Robins or something like that, as an older version, obviously. But I don't think Jake Gyllenhaal would be a very good Batman. I don't see Jake Gyllenhaal as a very intimidating individual. I can't see Jake Gyllenhaal having much of a presence as Bruce Wayne. So that one, I'm a lot less tentative on. I mean, he's a very handsome man. I think he's going to be great in the new Spider-Man movie. But I don't think the Prince of Persia is right for this one. Great actor. Nothing against the guy. I just don't think he's Bruce Wayne for me. But that is Emery's second choice. The third choice for Emery is Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, very great actor. Very monologue heavy actor in a lot of his roles. However, I don't think he would be the best for a new, younger version of Batman. I can definitely see Jeffrey Dean Morgan as like the older, grizzled type. I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan probably would have been a better option than Ben Affleck if you wanted to do the whole Dark Knight Rises type of tale. So I don't think Ben Affleck looks old enough, even with the fake grayed hair and the dye job and the salt and pepper stuff that DC tried to do. I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan would have been a wonderful option. Jeffrey Dean Morgan has done a lot of great roles, but I think his most well-known at the present time and date is his Negan character on Walking Dead, which I think he did a great job with. I didn't watch the last couple seasons of Walking Dead, but to the point I had seen, I thought he represented the character very well. And I totally see him. But I did kind of favor him more as like a Thomas Wayne figure in any kind of Flashpoint story or anything like that. And in fact, he did play Thomas Wayne at one point. So very interesting there. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, great choice, but I think he's a bit old for what they're shooting for, allegedly, for the Batman, where it's going to be kind of a younger Batman and more of a noir crime-solving setting. And then finally, he's got two more choices here. Number 4, he puts literally anyone but Ben Affleck, which I kind of have to agree with. I don't dislike Ben Affleck overall. I just dislike Ben Affleck on the big screen. I don't know how Emery feels about this. I'm only speaking purely for myself, but I find every single one of Ben Affleck's performances to be very dry and underwhelming. Even like the one he got a directing Oscar for, I believe, with Argo. Good movie, but his portrayal, in my opinion, was very lackluster and very just kind of one syllable mute. Like I know I've heard he played the character in Gone Girl very well. I haven't seen that movie, so I can't speak to it. But overall, I have been very underwhelmed by Ben Affleck's performances as an actor. However, I think he is a great great director if he wants to be. I think he could be a very outstanding director and probably one of the best directors in Hollywood if he pursued that route. And I think he is a skilled writer as well. Clearly, he's done a lot of great work. And he is a comic book aficionado. I would much rather see him helping out writing the stories, because I think there's a clear lack of writing definition from the groups and the DC WB studios. But I think he probably wasn't the best option for Batman. Enthusiasm aside, and I also don't think Emery felt that he was a very good proprietor of Batman, especially when he was so gung-ho about it in the beginning, and then he seemed to kind of abandon everything on the back end of it. Which, as a person who completely harps on rebooting this DC universe and taking it slowly instead of charging in head first and trying to shove everything in the beginning to try to catch up with Marvel, I'm assuming, I'm a fan of. I would prefer him to step aside, but I do prefer him more as a director and or writer than I do as actually portraying the characters. And then Emery's final choice was one that I had talked about several times on this podcast, I know. But for whatever reason, when I was making my list, I forgot to think of this guy. This is a really great actor who I think would do a wonderful job, and Emery is very correct in writing him down. John Hamm. Everybody wanted John Hamm to be Batman before Ben Affleck was announced. I was one of those people. I was very much in support of John Hamm becoming the Batman. But unfortunately, as we all know, that's not the way history manifested itself. But John Hamm, I think, would be an outstanding Bruce Wayne. I think he could be the kind of cynical kind of jerk that Batman can be at times. I think he would be great at causing people to dismiss him as kind of this kind of billionaire playboy that doesn't pay attention, and then obviously portray a more serious side. I think you don't have to look any further than his portrayal of Don Draper in Mad Men, where he does that very thing, often portrays the super confident, super extravagant, wealthy executive in this New York office in public and at the business. But then privately, he's a man with a lot of secrets. He's a man with a lot of mental anguish, a man with a lot of problems and issues that he deals with or doesn't deal with. And I think Jon Hamm is an actor who has proven time and time again that he can portray both sides of what Batman brings to the table, which is the kind of over-the-top, flamboyant billionaire playboy that's more or less dismissed and causes people to kind of look in the other direction. And then also the more serious, realistic Bruce Wayne, who's under the cowl, who's obsessive, who's very self-deprecating, and who prevents himself from forming really close relationships with a lot of people until they can break through his very thick skin, such as like what Dick Grayson often does, or what Selena Kyle often does, Talia al Ghul has done. So Jon Hamm, I think, is a great option. Once again, Emery's choices: number 1, Armie Hammer, Jake Gyllenhaal, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, literally anyone but Ben Affleck, and then Jon Hamm. And of his choices, I would say Jon Hamm is probably my favorite, followed by Armie Hammer. Now let's go ahead and get into my personal list. I had a few that I have on here. Unfortunately, again, I didn't think of Jon Hamm. If I had thought of Jon Hamm would have been my first choice. But for whatever reason, he didn't come to mind immediately, even though I've been on the show talking about Jon Hamm in the past. I think my top choice was Gerard Butler. Gerard Butler has played in a lot of action movies. He's obviously a very fit guy. I think he still can look young enough to be a kind of, late 30s, early 40s Bruce Wayne. I think he could play the role very well. He's an established actor. I know Emery raised questions about his Scottish accent that often bleeds through into his roles, but I think if you watch a lot of his more recent action roles, I think it was Olympus Falls or Fall of Olympus, something like that, where he's protecting the president and whatnot. I think he did an awesome job performing in those roles, both in an action capacity and as a kind of character that you want to root for and care about. My next choice was Joe Manganiello, and I understand that the current DCEU has portrayed him as Deathstroke in a kind of secret ending to, I think, the end of BVS. It might have been Justice League. It's probably Justice League, actually, now that I think about it. But the Batman, I don't think the Batman is going to be in the current universe. I think the Batman, I think they see all the goodwill they're getting with the previews for the Joker, and I think the executives might be feeling that the Joker role is going to be so promising that they'll finally have room to jump into something a little bit more nuanced than the current DCEU, and it's probably a large reason why, even though Ben Affleck came on to be the writer, director, and star of the Batman originally, that basically all of that has been thrown away and is no longer the case. So I think Joe Manganiello, if they can work this outside of the current DCEU, and I genuinely hope they do, I think he would be great for the role. He's obviously extremely fit. He's tall, dark, handsome, everything you'd expect. I mean, he's got a little bit of gray to him. Unfortunately, I think just about every established actor I have on my Batman list is more of an older individual that will probably need a little bit of makeup help or hair dye to kind of make sure they fit the correct aesthetic. However, I think Joe Manganiello does look youthful enough to, again, play that kind of early 40s Batman that I often picture. I may be the only one, but I often picture Batman as kind of a guy in his late 30s, early 40s, not as a guy in his late 20s or early 30s playing the role. I'm in my late 20s, and I certainly don't see myself ever playing the role of Batman at my age. and I think Joe Manganiello would be a great option. My next choice on here is Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender is probably the most prolific actor on my list. I mean, there may be some debate on that with my next few choices, but I think Michael Fassbender has the gravitas to kind of bring a really genuine, intricate side to Batman, much like how Christian Bale brought some extra nuance to the Batman role that previous Batman I don't think quite had. Now, we give a lot of that credit to Christopher Nolan, of course, but I think Michael Fassbender could bring a really interesting blend for this character. And seeing as Michael Fassbender is no longer going to be playing Magneto because the Fox studios have sold the rights to Disney, I think Michael Fassbender is clearly open and can very easily get in shape enough with the added help of prosthetics to portray a very cool, very interesting Batman, especially if you're going for the more subtle detective noir style Batman that is far more, I would say, far more cerebral than the Batman we've had with the current DCEU, who is more of a punch and stab and shoot first, explode now, and then think about it all later, or not think about it at all, which is kind of disappointing for me as a Batman fan and as a kind of DC fanboy. But again, maybe I'm just not managing my expectations very well. Next on my list, this one wasn't on my original list. However, Emery and I were joking around when we were looking at actors and kind of considering different people. But I ended up kind of considering it as a strong candidate, Sean Bean. You don't think of it at first, but if you take a look at some pictures, if you can picture him with kind of a darker brown / black hairstyle, I think he could bring a lot of gravitas to that role, much like Michael Fassbender. The downside to Sean Bean is that he is quite older, and I don't know if they can make him youthful enough to assume the role. So he's kind of a long shot character, but I do think he could be a potential option if you wanted a new form of cerebral Batman, and he didn't want to go with specifically Michael Fassbender. I will say this about Sean Bean. I think if you went with the kind of, I think, Earth 2 Batman, where Batman is more or less trained more by Alfred, who happens to be an ex-SAS Royal Paratrooper, or whatever the case may be, I think Sean Bean could be that Alfred. I think he would be excellent at it. The problem with Sean Bean is you would be thinking, okay, when's he going to die? So if you were planning on killing Alfred, it might be a spoiler. And then finally, this one's just like a toss the role into the wind. I don't think this actor has any interest in playing a superhero role in the near future. And quite frankly, if he was, I would want it to be the same one he's been playing. But again, another fallout from the Fox studio sale. Hugh Jackman, also known as Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman, I think, is a great actor. I'm a big fan of him. He is starting to get on kind of the older side. So once again, like many of these actors on my list, they're kind of in the late 40s, early 50s for a lot of them. And they're starting to kind of look at, not necessarily physically, but more in the face, which, let's face it, when you're in movies, and, you know, most of the emotion has to come from your face. The age of your face, it does matter. But I think Hugh Jackman obviously has the physique for the role. And I think he can do an American accent far more consistently than a lot of the people on my list, specifically Gerard Butler and Michael Fassbender. But I think Hugh Jackman would be an awesome an excellent actor to portray this role. However, I fear that, unfortunately, Hugh Jackman isn't interested in doing superhero movies for another decade, and I don't think he would be a long-term investment. You'd probably get him for 1-2 movies at most, and he would be a significantly paid actor, much like you would imagine Ben Affleck was. And I don't know if he would be the best option for the studio going forward. You would probably want somebody who is slightly less known, or at least a little less popular at the time and place. Hugh Jackman is in a ton of movies right now, doing a lot of musicals and plays and stuff like that as well. Michael Fassbender, another guy who's very popular at the moment and is doing a lot of roles, is about to, I believe, be in the Dark Phoenix movie, which probably going to be terrible, but he's getting paid for it nonetheless, and his face is out there. I think Joe Manganiello, Gerard Butler, and Sean Bean all have been kind of, if not off the grid, at least to taking kind of a break in between movies to a greater extent than the other ones. However, I would say that Gerard Butler is probably my favorite choice to be Batman, with a close follow-up by Michael Fassbender, and then Joe Manganiello being my favorites there. I just thought this would be a fun bonus thing, because while Emery and I were looking through actors, I kept looking at people and thinking, man, they would be perfect for this role or that role or whatever in the Batman universe. And I've said this in the past, but I think Oscar Isaac would be a perfect Nightwing. I know Oscar Isaac's, again, getting probably a little too old to be Dick Grayson Nightwing. However, I think, a little hair dye and he can look just as youthful as ever. I love him in the Star Wars movies. I think he's one of the more interesting characters especially the first movie. And I think Oscar Isaac can portray a character who happens to be of gypsy descent a lot more readily than a lot of the people that have been thought of to cast as Dick Grayson. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the times Dick Grayson is casted as a kind of very narrow, thin-faced individual who is not particularly fit, who's kind of built like me. I'm fit, but I'm also very scrawny and lanky, and I don't often picture Nightwing as just the scrawny, lanky type. I also don't picture him as a super big jacked type, and I think Oscar Isaac could be that perfect in-between, with the kind of complexion and kind of the more diverse look that is often prevalent among people of gypsy heritage. So I think if you want to portray an individual who is of gypsy descent, I think Oscar Isaac would be a really great option. And I think he also has the acting gravitas and the physical fitness to portray the role very capably. And he would be my favorite choice to be kind of a older, more mature Nightwing, to kind of complement an older, more mature Batman, which is pretty much all of my choices. And then I've also considered, now this one, there is a caveat. He's not my favorite choice by any means, but I think Zac Efron, the modern Zac Efron, if he wanted to stray away from the more comedic roles he's been prone to doing, I think he could be a very capable Nightwing, and kind of the younger skewed Nightwing, early to mid 20s. I think he still has that kind of youthful look to him, and he's obviously extremely fit and would probably do very well. If you've seen the Baywatch movie, he does a lot of Best Ninja type of workouts on that beach, and in his challenge with The Rock, where he's doing the ladder climbs like Stephen Amell does. He's doing the little pegs in the wall, and clearly has plenty of physical body control, and I think could do a lot of the stunts. I'm sure there'd be stuntmen doing a lot of the parts, but I think he could bring that kind of acrobatic performance, that fluid performance that is needed to portray Nightwing in combat and in his training sessions with Batman. And then finally, Dacre Montgomery came up, who is the character that plays the kind of bully in the second season of Stranger Things, the older teenage bully. I think he would be great playing Jason Todd, specifically a reanimated, post-murder Jason Todd, after he's been with the, Al Ghul's in training, lying in wait, trying to get his revenge. And I think it would be a great role to have Dacre Montgomery, Oscar Isaac, and Batman all kind of working together, specifically Gerard Butler, Michael Fassbender, Joe Manganiello, working through their kind of issues from past scars, bringing to light a lot of the deeper character moments from the comics that I think are often squandered in the movies. I think even with the Nolan trilogy, Bruce Wayne is not very well fleshed out in a lot of them. The closest they come is The Dark Knight, where he has to choose between doing the right thing and doing the thing he wants to do because his love interest may or may not love him back. But I think if you wanted to do a more serious, more respectable, more cerebral Batman, introduce other characters to the canon, such as Nightwing, such as Jason Todd as Red Hood, or however you want to portray him, I think this would be a great opportunity to kind of expand the universe without forcing a lot of extra storylines in, like they did with Justice League, like they did with Batman versus Superman, especially like they recently kind of did with Aquaman, where they sent every storyline in they could, and now they have nowhere to go. And the movies were way too long. The movies were not very coherent from beginning to end, had ridiculous plot points that were just meant to insert the new story, not particularly flesh out the characters or create a more enjoyable experience for the audience. But I think if you got Dacre Montgomery as Jason Todd, preferably Oscar Isaac or Zac Efron for Nightwing, and then match them up with a Joe Manganiello or Gerard Butler or Michael Fassbender as Batman, I think you could have a really outstanding cast. Even maybe Sean Bean as Alfred. I think you could have a really, really outstanding cast, a movie that's more about the family dynamics, about the trust between these characters, about the scars that each of these characters has to bear throughout their life. I think it would be awesome if they had some kind of adaptation of The Court of Owls, where they play on Nightwing's connection to them, where they play on the Wayne family's influence on them, where they play on Jason Todd and the Al Ghul connection, or possibly a Talon connection. I think there's a lot of interesting options that they have with those characters, and I think these actors, while they may not be the final choices, I think they, just with their presence and with their past performances, inspire enough ideas with their presence that you can easily work off of them. I think that wraps it up pretty well. If you got more suggestions for us, please feel free to send those to us. Remember, you can always contact us on Twitter at HTBVids. You can talk to us on Facebook at /HitTheBooks. Contact us via email at hitthebooksvids, VIDS, at gmail.com. And you can comment on our YouTube channel. Feel free to send us some input. You can talk to us on Patreon, all that stuff. We do appreciate all the input you guys give us, and it really helps us to kind of flesh out the show and bring you a better product in the end, I think. Who do you guys think would be a very capable Batman? Like I said, go ahead and give us a shout, and we'll talk about some of your answers in the next episode if time permits. So, with that, well, folks, I think that wraps up another mediocre edition of Hit the Books podcast. Mediocre. Like my Emery impression. It's pretty good, right? Thank you all for sticking with us. If you like what you hear, be sure to hit like and subscribe and follow us on your podcast services of choice and social networks. Remember, we're on Twitter at HTBVids. We're on Facebook at /HitTheBooks. And our website is htbvids.com. You can find any contact info on the website. You can also find links to all of these things, all the lists, all the previous covers of the week, and you can always reach out to us via the website there. I've been your host, Chris Holcomb. My co-host is Emery Saunders. I want to thank you for watching. We will see you next week.